In the wake of Konami basically ceasing to make games, fans everywhere have felt an intense pain over the loss of franchises that they own. Silent Hill, Castlevania, and Metal Gear are only some of the more high-profile cases. If you go a bit more obscure, you're likely to find fans lamenting the loss of Suikoden, Bomberman, or Zone of the Enders. But no one talks about one particular Konami series called Lost in Blue. In fact, even trying to do research for this video is just a series of infuriating dead ends. Lost in Blue was a DS continuation of a Game Boy Color series called Survival Kids. It started in 1999 and the last entry was in 2008. Lost in Blue never really reached any sort of notoriety or major success, despite being 6 entries long, but I noticed it. The year is probably around 2007. 14-year-old Dolan is given a number of Nintendo Power issues from earlier that year by a friend. In one particular issue is a spot on a DS title called Lost in Blue, a survival game about 2 teens forced to live on an abandoned island after a shipwreck. The art is somehow intriguing and mystifying, the premise is engaging, and it's at that moment I decide I have to own a DS. Though I wouldn't be able to purchase one until close to 2008, and I wouldn't even be able to get the game Lost in Blue until 2012, the impact that moment had on me never left. I would often reread that issue and pore over the art. Something about it gripped me, and when I finally got the game, I poured time into it, spending hours trying to beat it. But I never could, until now. Nearly a decade after getting the game that convinced me to buy a system, I finally beat it. And I gotta ask, was it worth all that hype? Yes and no. Let me explain. The game starts out strong. The premise? You are Keith, a high school senior stranded on an uninhabited island from some sort of cruise boat crash. Or so it seems, until you stumble upon Sky, another high schooler that was on the same boat as you. After a mishap where Keith destroys Sky's glasses, leaving her legally blind, and mentally impaired if her AI is any indication, the two team up to survive on the island and try and find a way off. Throughout the coming days, the two will have to learn to find food, build shelter, and explore the island. In the process, they'll come across wild animals, ancient temples, and perhaps something even more dangerous. The greatest strength of this game is the handcrafted mystery to the whole island. As you progress, you will find shortcuts that loop back in on themselves, and areas with better equipment that make survival more manageable, and allows you to explore further and further into the island. The game is at its strongest in these opening hours, when it's almost a mix between Metroidvania and survival. New elements and discoveries constantly come up that Keith and Sky discuss, showing their growing relationship throughout these trials and tribulations. As the game goes on, the loop can become a bit stale though, fewer shortcuts mean longer backtracking treks, and sections at the end absolutely require multiple visits, even though you ought to be able to do everything in one trip, and each trip requires a couple of in-game days of prep time to survive. The consequence of this is that the endgame feels noticeably less engaging as it goes on. It's also worth noting that without a guide, I played 80 in-game days, completely lost as to what to do, but with a guide, it only took 32 to beat the entire thing. In other words, the game is obtuse, and even misleading at points. But, at least at first, that's part of the charm. Discovering which mushrooms are helpful and which are hurtful, figuring out how to make traps and hunt, all of that sort of thing is really endearing. But once that trial and error obtuseness gets tied to plot progression, and the game begins walling off certain sections behind day-long treks having to be repeated over and over again, it goes from an intriguing mystery to somewhat annoying at parts. But despite it dragging in the middle, the ending absolutely makes up for it. The growing relationship between Sky and Keith is finally paid off, and as the tranquil music plays, you get to read a book of Sky's view of the events, and her growing feelings for Keith. It's a sweet ending that left me feeling a real sense of joy at completing the game, touching me in a way that few games really can. So back to my earlier question, did it live up to the hype? Well, the no section is that this game is basically a glorified tech demo, and today isn't even in my top 5 DS games. The yes section is this. It's still one of those rare games on my legendary shelf. I still find the art intriguing, I still smile as I hear the music, and the character interactions always bring joy to my life. This game has a sort of mysterious, uncanny appeal that I can't quite place in its simple and charming design. Making this video and finding so many dead ends reflected the experience of finally beating Lost in Blue itself. It left me a little melancholy that it's over, and that there really isn't anything deeper to find. but also happy to have experienced it, and enjoy that special lightning in a bottle experience that just can't be quantified. Researching this game and finding who made it was rather difficult, and I was really sad to learn that the team didn't continue doing what they did. But to Hiroshi Kamo, the character designer and artist, and Mari Yamaha, the writer, storyboarder, UI designer, and ending animation director, I wanted to thank specifically, as well as the rest of the team who made this game that impacted me so deeply. You might not have gotten the appreciation you deserve when the game was released, but your work touched me, and I won't ever forget it. I can no longer find that issue of Nintendo Power that inspired me all those years ago. No copies of it exist online anymore either. It seems Kamo-san turned to sound design after this and didn't continue to make his wonderful art. Yamaha-san now works as an independent software contractor. It seems the magic of this game really is lost to time. But the impact this little game had on me, the work those people put into it, it's something I'll carry with me forever. Even if the work fades into obscurity, even if the very people that made it forget about it, I won't. It's a part of me, and how I tell stories now. So one final time, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to all the creators of this title, and I hope this reaches you well. My name is Dalin Malna. God bless.